Well, shalom, shalom, welcome, welcome, world changers. Thank you, Hannah, for the beautiful music. Thank you for blessing us once again with your talent. Live music from Hannah, live music from Hannah. Tonight, we have another critical thinking segment. For the critical thinking segment tonight, we're going to be talking about the correct attitude to have for critical thinking. And then we're going to finish up Joshua chapter 15. We started it last night. We read through it, going through every city, at least in the Masoretic text anyways, according to the Masoretic Hebrew text. We followed the map as much as we possibly could on that. And we also started the first few verses of manuscript variation and manuscript comparisons. So tonight we're going to, Lord willing, finish off the chapter. It is a little bit more of a lengthy chapter, and there are a number of manuscript variations. I pray that everything that we share here today would be a great blessing to you, increase your knowledge of the scriptures, your knowledge of the things of heaven, your relationship with God, and your knowledge of the truth. Amen, amen, amen. See what we have here in the live chat before we get into it. We have Chipmunk says, shalom everyone. Seek the Lord says shalom. Chipmunk says, beautiful music, Hannah. And the second verse says shalom. Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome and blessings to y'all. Blessings multiplied to you and your families. And thank you, Chipmunk, again, on behalf of Hannah. Blessings. Al says, shalom everyone. Great blessings. Shalom, Al. Great blessings, not just added, but multiplied back to you and your family as well, Al. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to start with the critical thinking segment. This is about the correct attitude that would enable us to perform our good critical thinking, any kind of good critical thinking skills. Imagine two people are given the exact same set of high-quality tools, a saw, a hammer, a measuring tape. The first person, with an attitude of impatience, frustration, and carelessness, builds a rickety, unstable shack. The second person, with an attitude of patience, curiosity, and a desire to create something of quality, builds a beautiful, sturdy table. The tools were excuse me. The tools were the same. The attitude determined the outcome. This is exactly the same with our minds. Our logic, our reason, and our knowledge are our mental tools. But the quality of the beliefs we build and the character we shape is determined almost entirely by the attitude we bring to the task. Hubert says shalom. Shalom, Huberts. Welcome and blessings multiplied to you and your family. I'm going to tell you a true story, folks. Now, this was way back in, when was it now? The mid-90s, I'm thinking. Mid-90s. I went to that was before the internet was a thing, you know. I went to the local public library and I saw one of the newspapers that were there. It was on the table, and so I went there and I opened the newspaper. And I thought, let me just see what kind of jobs that there are available. I was looking for a job and such, and I saw that there was a job that was available in a city, another city. And the pay was really, really good. And so I called, and they called me in right away I thought it was an interview, but it really wasn't an interview per se. It was training. So I had to travel all the way from where I used to live to this other city. It took about maybe 2 hours or maybe more to travel there. You know, the money was really good. You know, I'm thinking, okay, well, we'll see what happens. And they called me in. So when I got there, it turned out that there was about, 30 plus people there besides myself. And they set us up for a training session. It was like a class. And so there was this man that got up to teach about the job, and he kept on saying over and over again, remember, he said, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. He said it so many times, I memorized it by the time I left there. He said it so many times during the presentation. He said, remember, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. So at the end of the session, he had a short little Q&A. And so a few people asked questions and such, and then he closed it out. And I was making my way home, and I thought to myself, oh, you know what? There's a question that I wanted to ask, and he said to everyone before everyone left, he said, if you have any questions, just call, and we'll answer your question. So on my way home, I called and I spoke to that very same gentleman. And I said, hey, I got a question. And the question was simple, was, do I need to meet like some sort of quota? Do I need to meet some sort of quota? And right away he snapped back. He said, I told you, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. Don't ever come back. You're fired. Don't come back. So I hung up the phone, and of course, initially the first response was that of anger, like, he doesn't even know me, and I really didn't have any. My question was an honest question, and I just want to know if there was a certain kind of quota that needs to be met. And so at first I thought, let me just. I was just getting angry. Then I thought to myself, no, you know what? I'm just going to, instead of getting angry, I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to chalk it up as a lesson learned in life. It's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. So, fast forward several years. I was at a big event. It was a Christian event, and there was this major famous Christian leader / speaker / evangelist that was speaking at this particular meeting. I don't at this point in time I don't feel comfortable naming the actual person, but it was a very famous person. I think this person went over overseas before, and he had I think it was like about 1 million people or something that showed up at his meeting. But anyways, so I went to this meeting, and there was a situation that I was in that I had to sit away from the rest of the crowd. So when I got into the to the venue, I noticed along the back wall of the venue there was like a line of chairs. Like I'm thinking, this is awesome, this is great, this is exactly what I want, this is exactly what I need. I'll just sit in the very back, because nobody was sitting there. Of course, everybody wanted to get as close as possible to the front. So I'm sitting there, and again, folks, without getting into too much detail, there was a situation that I was in that I needed to sit away from the crowd. And before too long, I noticed the staff were taking up all the other chairs. And then there was this guy that came to me and said, "You're going to have to move. You're going to have to go into the main area to sit down with everybody else." And I'm thinking, no, I can't do that. Again, there was this situation that I was in that I'm thinking, like, don't you understand why I'm sitting here and why I have to sit away from everyone else? Anyway, so again, I was faced with the situation of either getting extremely angry, which I was very tempted to do, get very angry, or I thought, you know what? Instead of getting angry, I'm going to go find that guy again, and I'm going to kindly explain a little bit more of this whole scenario. So I did. I went and I found this gentleman, and I said, I just wanted to let you know why I don't want to sit in the middle of everyone. Okay, I don't want to sit there. I can't sit there. It's just, I showed him and I told him the whole situation, and he said, let me go get this other person. So he went and got this other person, and I knew this other person was very close or high in rank in the quote unquote in the ministry that of this preacher. And so I explained the same thing with this other person. I said, okay, this is what happened. I was sitting in the back. This is the reason why. Then I had to move to the middle, right in the middle of everyone. And this person said, you know what? At the end of the meeting, and it was a lady. She said, She pointed over here. She said, I'll meet you over here by the curtains, at the side by the curtains, and I'm going to take you backstage at the end of the meeting so you can talk to this particular preacher yourself. And I'm thinking, is this for real? Are you serious? So anyways, I waited through the whole meeting. I can't even remember what the sermon was about or any of the songs that were sung. I can't remember anything about the meeting because all I was thinking about for the whole thing, I was just thinking about what's going to happen. Is this really going to happen? Well, at the end of the meeting, so I went to the place where this person told me to meet her, and lo and behold, she was there, and she took me behind the curtains and down long corridors and down long hallways. And to make a long story short, I was able to go backstage with almost a one-on-one meeting. It wasn't one-on-one exactly because this particular person had their entourage kind of thing with this preacher, had a few other people with him, and I thought to myself, what an amazing privilege! What an amazing privilege this is. I know that millions of people would have loved to have been where I was, to love to have had the experience of going backstage with this preacher and having a very personal conversation and contact with this person. So that is another thing that I experienced in my life that taught me once again. It's my attitude. If I would have followed through with just getting angry, getting offended, who knows? I would have either walked out or I would have just zipped up and just, bottled up all of my anger, all of my offenses, all of my, gripes. I would have just bottled it all up instead of actually just venting it in a very kind way. And it really, I wouldn't have had the experience that I had. So hallelujah and praise God for that. That was an amazing experience. It is attitude. Yeah, the foundation here, it says. The foundation, your attitude is your mind's operating system. Think of your attitude as the operating system for your mind. Your brain is the hardware. The skills you learn, like logic, are the software programs. But your attitude is the underlying operating system that determines how well everything runs. An operating system that is defensive, arrogant, or cynical will cause even the best software to crash or produce garbage results. But an operating system that is open, humble, and curious allows every other program to run smoothly and effectively. Your attitude is the fundamental posture you take towards information, towards other people, and towards yourself. The 3 pillars of a critical thinking attitude. So what is the quote-unquote right attitude? It's not one single feeling, but a combination of three essential mindsets. Number one, curiosity over cynicism. This is about how you approach new information. The wrong attitude or cynicism, the cynic approaches a new idea with their arms crossed, looking for the flaw. Their first question is, what's wrong with this? They treat new knowledge as a potential threat to be neutralized. It is a posture of deep suspicion. The right attitude, curiosity. The curious person approaches a new idea with open hands, looking for the value. Their first question is, what can I learn from this? Or, that's interesting. Why do they see it that way? They treat new knowledge as a potential gift. The payoff. Curiosity opens doors that cynicism slams shut. A cynical mind might be good at tearing things down, but it can't build anything new. A curious mind is the engine of all discovery and learning. Number two, inquiry over advocacy. This is about your goal when you enter a discussion or open a text. The wrong attitude, advocacy. The advocate has already made up their mind. Their goal is to win the argument. They use evidence like a lawyer, selectively presenting only the facts that support their preconceived conclusion and ignoring or explaining away anything that contradicts it. They are there to persuade, not to learn. The right attitude, inquiry. The inquirer comes to the table with a question, not a verdict. Their goal is to learn. They look at evidence like a detective, examining all the clues, especially the ones that challenge their initial theory. They are willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads. They are there to investigate, not to litigate. The payoff. An attitude of inquiry is your greatest defense against your own confirmation bias. It leads to conclusions that are more honest, more robust, and more aligned with the truth. Number three, resilience over rigidity. Hubert says, that's why I'm here, a goal to learn. Amazing. Thank you, Hubert. Yes. Yes, that is awesome. It's really good for us all to learn from each other, learn from the text. Thank you, Huberts. Number three, resilience over rigidity. This is about how you react to being wrong. The wrong attitude or rigidity. The rigid mind sees a mistaken belief as a crack in its very foundation. Its identity is fused with being right. When confronted with powerful counter-evidence, it can't bend. So it shatters into anger or defensiveness. It clings to its current beliefs at all costs. The right attitude, resilience. The resilient mind understands that being wrong isn't a failure. It's a crucial part of the learning process. Its identity is tied to the pursuit of truth, not to the possession of its current set of beliefs. When a belief is proven wrong, it's seen as an opportunity for an upgrade, a course correction that brings it closer to the truth. The payoff. Resilience makes you a lifelong learner. It frees you from the exhausting and impossible burden of having to be right all the time and gives you the quiet confidence to adapt and grow. Today's challenge, the right attitude for critical thinking isn't something you're born with, it's a choice you make, moment by moment. Your challenge for today is to perform a simple quote-unquote attitude check. As you go through your day, especially when you encounter a new idea, a disagreement, or a moment of uncertainty, just pause for a second and ask yourself, what is my attitude right now? Am I leaning towards curiosity or cynicism? Am I in the mode of inquiry or advocacy? Am I feeling resilient or rigid? You don't have to judge yourself or force an immediate change. The first and most powerful step is simply to become aware of the posture you are bringing to the moment. That awareness is the beginning of all wisdom. Awesome. Katrina says, good day and shalom to all. Good day and shalom and blessings multiplied to you and your family and your friends down under. Katrina, good to see you. Blessings, blessings. Okay, so we are going to get into a very, very interesting comparison between the manuscripts of Joshua chapter 15. What otherwise would be a very grueling and a very boring, in many cases, chapter because of just all these names of all these cities that nobody really, even today, it's like a lot of times you don't even know where some of these cities were situated. When we dig into the manuscripts, the differences between the manuscripts, this is where it all comes to life. We've got 4 different manuscripts we're going to be comparing tonight. The 4 ones that we have been comparing all along. If you're new here, the 4 manuscripts that we have been comparing and will tonight are the Septuagint, the Masoretic Hebrew, the Syriac, and the Vulgate. The Septuagint, more specifically, is the Brenton Septuagint, an English translation of the Greek translation of the Hebrew, and that dates around 3,000 years old. I mean, the Greek, the original Greek. Very, very old. That's the oldest of all the texts. Up from there, we have the Syriac. The Syriac dates around, I'd say, around the 2nd century, around there. Okay, so that's several hundred years younger than the, not several hundred. Yeah, a few hundred anyway. 200 to 400 years younger, I would say, than the Septuagint. Up from there, we have the Vulgate in around the 4th, 5th century. Translated by Jerome, and then we have the Masoretic Hebrew text. That is dated, at least the finalized Masoretic Hebrew is dated around the 9th, 10th century. It's not very old, in spite of the fact that most Christians they call it the original Hebrew. You know, I know most of you probably heard about, the original Hebrew, the original Hebrew says this, the Hebrew says that. Normally what they're talking about is the Masoretic Hebrew, which really isn't original. It is Hebrew, but it really isn't that original because it's so young. So we're going to be comparing all those, and we got lots of differences between them. One of the greatest differences is around the end of the chapter, where we got a whole entire another verse actually added in one of those manuscripts. Just give me about 2 minutes, guys. Just about 2 minutes. Hold on a second. Thank you for your patience, guys. I appreciate that. Let's begin last night we read Joshua chapter 15, the whole entire chapter. What we did was we brought out the map and we looked at everything on the map as much as we could possibly find, and then we got up to about verse 7 in our manuscript variations, manuscript comparisons. Now, there's one thing I'd like to point out here in verse 2. I don't think we spoke about this last night, but this is in verse 2. So I'm going to read verse 2, and then we're going to go to verse 10 after that. Okay, verse 2 says, their south border, this was the south border of Judah in context, was from the uttermost part of the salt sea, from the bay that looks southward. So I want to focus in on that part of the verse where it says part of the salt sea from the bay that looks southward. The Septuagint says in verse 2, part of the salt sea from the high country that extends southward. So we got high country here instead of the bay. Peshitta, we have, it says from the end of the salt sea that went up from there to to the isthmus of the south of the side of the south. Now that's weird. Isthmus. The Vulgate is very much like the Masoretic text. It says from the it says salt sea from the bay thereof that looks to the south. Okay, so I don't think we spoke on that last night. Correct me if I'm wrong there, if my memory serves me correctly. So we did verse 3, 4, we did everything up until verse 7 last night. So let's start after verse 7. Now, if you are new here and you didn't see the live stream that we did last night, that is still up on YouTube for you to view as a live replay after the fact. So please go over and watch that. Go back and watch that if you haven't already, if you're interested in knowing all of the other manuscript variations and comparisons of the other verses. Okay, so let's get into... Well, you know what? Let's start with verse 7. I mean, just as a recap, because verse 7 was very, very intricate, and we didn't get too deep in it last night, although we did talk about it. So I'm going to read verse 7 in its entirety, then we'll break it down phrase by phrase. It says here, the border went up to Debir from the valley of Achor, and so northward, looking toward Gilgal, that faces the ascent of Adumim, that is on the south side of the river. The border passed along the waters of En Shemesh and ended at En Rogel. Okay, so last night we had the map out, and we had that all mapped out there. But let's we'll do the manuscript variations tonight. The border went up to Debir. This is the WEB translation of the Masoretic Hebrew text. Okay? This would be the same manuscript family that the King James, New King James, NIV, NASB, CSB, ASV, RSV, they're all based upon this particular manuscript variation. The border went up to Debir. The Septuagint says, and the borders continue on the fourth part of the valley of Achor. Whoa, wait a second. So, okay, let's take this whole phrase here from the Masoretic text. The border went up to Debir from the valley of Achor. The Septuagint says the borders continue on the fourth part of the valley of Achor. It says nothing here of Debir, but it says fourth part instead of Debir. The Syriac / Peshitta / Aramaic says, and the border went up to Debir from the deep valley of Achor. So that's a little bit different even yet. They got deep valley there instead of just simply valley. And then the Vulgate says, and reaching as far as the borders of Deborah. Deborah. You might say, well, wait a second, Christopher, how can it go from Debir to Deborah? In ancient Hebrew, there were no vowels. It was all consonants. Okay, so you would have, like, the Debir would have the Hebrew equivalent of the letter D, as in Donald, the letter B, as in birthday, and the letter R, as in Ronald. So we got three letters, D, B, and R. It would be Dalet, Beit, and Resh in the Hebrew. So there were no vowels. So what happened was, different ages, different cultures, different scribes, different translators would put different vowels in between those consonants. So instead of Debir, as we see at like the D-E-B-I-R, as we see in the W-E-B translation of the Masoretic Hebrew, Septuagint doesn't even have that transliterated there. In the Peshitta, it's the same, Debir, D-E-B-I-R, but in the Vulgate, it's D-E-B-A-R-A. So they decided to put A instead of I, and then another A at the end. So Deborah, from the valley of Achor. Moving on, it says, and so northward, looking toward Gilgal. Septuagint, and go down to Galgal. How does that work? How can you go? Well, the Septuagint's older, but that doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't necessitate that it's more accurate. It's more likely to be accurate because it's older, and it doesn't, because of its age, it doesn't give that much opportunity for scribal errors and manipulation and transmission errors. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is the most accurate. So in the older text, we have northward to Gilgal. But in the Septuagint is go down to Galgal. Wow, now that's different. Now the so the map here. Let's pull out the map again. So this map, you will see it is the map of the Holy Land, the Middle East here, and we got Jordan here. We have, this would be like Saudi Arabia, and then we have Cairo over here. Okay, so Israel right there. So you see the blue lines right here? Hold on a second. So yeah, so we got the this area right here, the North Sinai Governorate and the South Sinai Governorate right there, and then Saudi Arabia down here, or right in this area. Jordan. So we got this blue area that is mapped out for us. This is the region of Judah as it describes in Joshua chapter 15, verse, the whole entire chapter actually. The southern border right here, that's what we're reading right now. We have a few of the city names that we just read. So it says in the text, in verse 6, Bethaglaam. So that would be, okay, we got the stone of Baon, the son of Reuben. The borders continue toward the valley of Achor and go down to Galgal. Okay, so looking here on the map, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one there. Gilgal is right there. Okay? Gilgal is right there. So, trying to... And Debir is right up there. Debir, and then Gilgal or Galgal right there. So it is down to Galgal. If you look at it this way, you're going from Debir and you go down to Galgal or Gilgal. So the text itself says the borders continue in the fourth valley of Achor and go down to Galgal. That's in the Septuagint. But in the Masoretic text it says the border went up to Debir from the valley of Achor, and so northward looking toward Gilgal. So it appears if this map is right, then it appears like the Septuagint could be the more accurate one there. Because Gilgal is not north of Debir, it's south of Debir. So going down to Galgal, as it says here in the Septuagint. The Peshitta says, up to Debir, the valley, from the deep valley of Achor and to the north, and returns to Galilee. So it's not Gilgal or Galgal, but Galilee. Here's a question. Is Galilee another name for Gilgal? Is Galilee another name for Gilgal? Because if it's not, then this is a totally different place. And as far as I can see, the answer to this question is that no, it is not. because Gilgal is in the southern part and Galilee is in the northern part. Let me see now. So we got let's do a search here for Galilee. No, it doesn't show up here. Okay. Give me a second here, folks. Yeah, so we got Galilee north in northern Israel, not in southern Israel. So this is not okay, so here's a map right here, folks. So you can see, there's the Dead Sea, and we are talking about this southern border here for Judah. And you see how Gilgal was down there on the other map, right? So the Gilgal was down. Okay, sorry, folks. Gilgal is so it is. We are reading the description of the southern border in Joshua chapter 15, verse 7, which talks about this southern border right here, Debir, which is. Why is it pulled up here in the north? Yeah, because this is all about the southern border. So even so, if this is Gilgal here, so that'd be right by the Dead Sea. Okay, so we got. Let's just say if this is Gilgal, because there is a question mark here by the city name. Right by the Dead Sea. So according to this map, that would make Gilgal right about there. But Galilee is way up past Samaria. You see? So the Sea of Galilee way up there, in the region of Galilee way up quite a bit more north than what we have here at the Dead Sea. So I think we can come to the conclusion then that the Septuagint, the Syriac is contradictory to the Septuagint and to the Masoretic text, or vice versa. The Masoretic / Septuagint is contradictory to the Syriac, because it's talking about two completely different places. Galilee is not Gilgal. It's not even near Gilgal. The Latin Vulgate says, so northward looking towards Galgal. Okay. And then the next phrase of verse 7, that faces the ascent of Adumim, Septuagint, which is before the approach of Adamine, N as in Nancy at the end. And then we have the Syriac that says that's next to the ascent of Ramin. Next to the ascent of Ramin. The Vulgate says opposite to the ascent of Adomim. So the Syriac once again is the odd one here, seemingly translating it instead of transliterating it, translating it to ascent of Ramin instead of Adumim or Adamin. And the next part of the verse says, which is on the south side of the river. The Septuagint says that is in the southward, that is southward in the valley. So that doesn't say anything about river there in the Septuagint. It's valley in the Septuagint and river in the Masoretic Hebrew. In the Peshitta it says to the south, or from the south to the river. And then we have the Vulgate on the south side of the torrent. So this is typical when you have two different manuscripts that have vastly different words, like river versus valley. It's quite common for the other manuscripts to also have different words, like this is called torrent. Next part of the verse, the border passed along the waters of En Shemesh. The border passed along the waters of En Shemesh. Septuagint, and terminate at the water of the fountain of the sun. So the Septuagint again seems to have translated it instead of transliterated it. The Peshitta says, and passed to the border of Ayin Shemesh. Vulgate, and to the border, and the border passes the waters that are called the fountain of the sun. So Jerome stuck with the Septuagint on this one, it seems to me. The last phrase in that verse, verse 7, and ended at Enrogel, R-O-G-E-L. The Septuagint says, and going forth shall be the fountain of Rogel. The Syriac says, the fountain of the sun and its limits were at Ein Dugal, the fountain of lying. The fountain of lying. And the Vulgate says, and the goings out thereof shall be at the fountain Rogel. Fountain Rogel. So Jerome seems to go with more with the Septuagint again there. Chipmunk says, when it mentions quote-unquote stone as a border, my mind goes to natural formations or a very large rock they set up. I always wonder if those stone markers are still there today. Yes. Yeah, very interesting. Could very well be, especially if it's very large. If it's a large one, I can't see anybody wanting to move it, very quickly. Anyways, yeah, very well could be still there today. Thank you, Chipmunk. Okay, so our next verse. So first of all, verse 7 here is such a dumpster fire of variation, as ye all can see. Verse 7 is so variant across all of these texts. It's so much different. So, the significant differences. We have Brenton saying the fourth part of the valley of Achor. Instead of Debir from the valley of Achor. The Peshitta, Galilee instead of Gilgal. So that is a major geographical discrepancy. So Gilgal is in a location of the Judean wilderness, whereas Galilee is a large region far to the north. So this represents a fundamental difference in the geographical understanding of the border in this manuscript. Also, the Peshitta has the En Ain Dedugal, fountain of lying, instead of just simply En Rogel as we have in the Masoretic text, En Rogel. So this is a major difference as well. En Rogel versus Ain Dedugal, the fountain of lying. Wow. Verse 10 is another one we can look at here. This also has a significant variant in it. So verse 10, it says, and the border turned about from Baalah westward to Mount Seir and passed along to the side of Mount Yerim or Jerim, also called Chesalon, on the north, and went down to Beth Shemesh and passed along by Timnah. So the one we want to focus on here is right here, where it says westward to Mount Seir. Westward to Mount Seir. So the Peshitta in verse 10 also says to the west to Mount Seir. The Vulgate says westward unto Mount Seir. Now watch this. The Brenton says to the sea. So the Brenton's general direction of to the sea is much less precise than specifying Mount Seir. Now, is this a contradiction? No, it's not necessarily a contradiction, but it is less specific for tracing the border. This is makes it a little bit more ambiguous. The next verse, verse 11. And the border went out to the side of Ekron northward, and the border extended to Shikeron, and passed along to Mount Baalah, and went out at Jabneel or Yabneel, and the goings out of the border were at the sea. So, in the same way, the Masoretic text and the Peshitta are very similar here, because it says Yabeel went out to Yabeel in the Peshitta, and then the Vulgate also says, and cometh into Yabneel. The Septuagint is different. It says will terminate at Lebna. Okay, so it's similar, but different. Terminate at Lebna. But here's the thing. As far as we can see, Lebna is a distinct city, different. It's different from Mount Baalah, as we read here. Mount Baalah and went out to Jabneel. It's different than that. It's a distinct city in its own right. So that means that the Septuagint could be leading us to on a different path for this border. A different path, or the endpoint for the border here in the Septuagint. You see how important it is, folks, to have all of these manuscripts in front of us and available, so we can go through it like this, piece by piece, and learn from it as we go. I have never, in all of my days, I have never been to a Bible study that did what we're doing here tonight. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a Bible study like this. I have never. I have never been to a Bible study, or even a church service for that matter, that actually compared the manuscripts like this, spoke about the differences. Okay, so let's go back to the text. Verse 12. Masoretic text. The west border was to the shore of the great sea. This is the border of the children of Judah according to their families. Septuagint. These are the borders of the children of Judah round about according to their families. That's quite different, isn't it? Isn't that different? So the Masoretic again says, the west border was to the shore of the Great Sea. This is the border of the children of Judah according to their families. The Septuagint says these are the borders of the children of Judah round about according to their families. Now, you could say that the verse before that, okay, so the verse 11 in the Septuagint is very long. Verse 11 here in the Masoretic text, let's just compare the two, just to make sure that they didn't divide the verses differently here. So in the Masoretic text, we have verse 11 closing, talking about, okay, and went out to Jabneel, and the goings out about the border, goings out of the border were at the sea. Okay, so it seems that verse 12 starts in the midst of verse 11 of the Septuagint. So it is a different numbering system of the verses here. So basically, half of verse 12 is in verse 11 in the Septuagint. Let's check out the Peshitta. Verse 12, and its border is from the west to Meribah at its borders. Its border is from the west to Meribah at its borders. This is the border of the children of Yehudah for their families, like a circle. Like a circle. So we got two major differences here, folks. Meribah is named here, totally different. And like a circle, I guess you could say it's true in a vague sense that Judah, the borders of Judah comes around as a circle, if you will. But isn't that interesting? Chipmunk says, I love seeing the study with the maps. All right, that's good. Thank you, Chipmunk. The lying fountain and sun verse really has me thinking. Then hearing the sea is a border, that makes me think lying fountain, like possible laying fountain type of water. If not, it must have ... Yeah, very interesting. It must have been a beautiful feature, natural or man-made. Unless that's an idiom or phrase from them. Yeah, very good. Never thought of it like that. Thank you, Chipmunk. Very good. Meribah. We have Meribah in the Peshitta. So here's another question. In the Holy Peshitta Bible translated, we have in Joshua chapter 15, verse 12, the border is from the west to Meribah. In the other versions, like the Masoretic text, the WEB translation, it says the west border was to the shore of the Great Sea. The Septuagint, Brenton's Septuagint, also says that these are the border, or the border was at the Great Sea. So where was Meribah? Where was Meribah? Was it near the sea? Was it at the sea? That's my question. Let me see if I can find Meribah on the map. So according to this, Meribah is Rephidim, which is not nowhere is near the sea. Oh, give me a second here. Yeah, so okay, so what I got here is that Meribah was actually Rephidim, which is marked out with this red balloon, and so that would be in the around the point of the Sinai Peninsula, which is nowhere near the sea. So that would be like right around here on the map, as opposed to what we have. We're talking about up in this area, because Yabneel is right there. Mount Baalah is right there. Okay, so because we're reading Joshua chapter 15, verse 12, which details the northern border moving westward from Mount Baalah to Yabneel, right there, and then it says to the sea. So we go this way, right? Like as it shows here on this map. But Meribah is way down here. So that is a major discrepancy as well. That's a major discrepancy in the text. So that would be a contradiction, because there's no way you can have it both ways. So Meribah. So the Peshitta says that the Peshitta, that'd be the Syriac, says that the border is from the west to Meribah at its borders. Wow, that's very, very different. Chipmunk says, "Oh, I just looked at Meribah, Christopher. It's worth the look to tie it in. Place of no water, where other stories in the Bible were mentioned. So a border of water, the sea, and a border of no water, possibly mountains." Right, that's very interesting. Thank you, Chipmunk, for pointing that out. And that just reminds me of what the actual meaning of the name Meribah. Doesn't it mean like bitter waters or something to that effect? Mar means bitter. Meribah. Yeah, very, very interesting. Because, okay, let me see here. Meribah. So in the book of Numbers, this is the water of Meribah. So this is the water of Meribah. So Meribah, if we go into the interlinear, and we look it up in the Hebrew, Meribah means strife, contention, a fountain of flowing from a rock in the desert of sin. Okay, so it doesn't mean bitter waters, it means strife, contention. And that's why they named the place Meribah, because of them striving with God at that location. If I'm correct on that. Wow, very good. Thank you for pointing that out, Chipmunk. It caused us to dig deeper here into it. So only the Syriac has Meribah, and its border is from the west to Meribah and its borders. This is the border of the children of Yehuda for their families, like a circle. Wow, that is really, really different. Chipmunk says, is the rock Moses struck the lying fountain then? Wow. I never thought about that either. There's a good one. Very well could be, Chipmunk. Very well good. Could be. Very good. Very good thinking there. That is amazing. That's awesome. Lots of stuff to chew on here. Lots of stuff to chew on. Verse 13. Hold on a second, folks. Okay. Verse 13. He gave to Caleb the son of Jephunneh a portion among the children of Judah, according to the commandment of Yahweh to Joshua, even Kiriath Arba, named after the father of Anak, also called Hebron. Kiriath Arba, named after the father of Anak, also called Hebron. So if my memory serves me correctly, we touched on this in a previous live stream. Was it a previous passage, wasn't it? That also spoke about this, Kiriath Arba. Nevertheless, let's see what's going on here. So it's Kiriath Arba, even the father, after the father of Anak. In other words, this city was named after the father of Anak, also called Hebron. Septuagint says, and to Caleb the son of Jephunneh he gave a portion in the midst of the children of Judah by the command of God. And Joshua gave him the city of Arbach, the metropolis of Anak. Excuse me, this is Hebron. Joshua gave him the city of Arbach, the metropolis of Anak. The Septuagint says, according to the commandment of Yahweh to Joshua, even Kiriath Arba, named after the father of Anak. The Peshitta says, and to Caleb the son of Jephunneh, Yeshua gave a division among the children of Yehuda according to the word of the mouth of the Lord Jehovah. And Caleb said to Yeshua, give me this Kiriath Arba, field of four. The field of four. of the father of the giants. And Yeshua gave to Caleb Kiriath Arba, the field of 4 of the father of giants, which is Hebron. Wow, look at that. So much different. So much different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.5 or more lines there. And then in the Masoretic text, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 lines. So much more in the Peshitta. Let's see what the Vulgate says here before we get into a deeper analysis. It says, but to Caleb the son of Yephuneh he gave a portion in the midst of the children of Yehudah as the Lord had commanded him. Kiriath Arba, the father of Enoch, which is Hebron. So is he going with the... No, he's not going with the Septuagint there, because it doesn't say the father of Enoch. It says the metropolis of Enoch in the Septuagint. Very, very different, folks. So we have, in the Masoretic text, Kiriath Arba, named after the father of Anak, also called Hebron. Septuagint, the city of Arbuk, the metropolis of Enoch, this is Hebron. The Peshitta, where do I start with this one? According to the mouth of the Lord Jehovah, and Caleb said to Yeshua, give to me. See, so here's a difference. We got Caleb actively pursuing this city, active about asking for this city, whereas the other ones, Caleb is very passive. He gave to Caleb this city. We don't have Caleb asking for it. We just have Caleb receiving it. It's very passive. Whereas in the Septuagint, the Peshitta, Caleb is it's just actively assertive here. Give me this Kiriath Arba, the field of 4 of the father of giants. And Yeshua gave to Caleb Kiriath Arba, the field of 4 of the father of giants, which is Hebron. So the Vulgate, right? So the Vulgate's pretty short there. So the Peshitta uniquely translates. So it's got both the transliteration and the translation in the Peshitta. So this is providing an interpretative detail about the city's name that is not present in any of the other manuscripts. So you see what we learn here by comparing the manuscripts? We learn a lot more. We get so much deeper into the text. Verse 18 is another one. Verse 18, when she came, she had him ask her father for a field. She got off her donkey, and Caleb said, what do you want? Let's go to the Peshitta. Verse 18. And when she was his, she wanted to ask from her father an inheritance of the field, and she dismounted from the donkey. And Caleb said to her, how is it with you, my daughter? So that's different. So the Masoretic text says she got off her donkey, and Caleb said, what do you want? Peshitta, she dismounted from the donkey. Caleb asked her, how is it with you, my daughter? The Septuagint, verse 18, and it came to pass as she went that she counseled him and said, I will ask of my father a field. And she cried out. She cried from off her donkey. She cried. And Caleb said to her, what is it? So the Septuagint, as she went out, that she counseled him, saying, I will ask of my father a field. The Masoretic text, when she came, she had him ask her father for a field. So she had him ask her father for a field versus she went out, as she went out, that she counseled him, saying, I will ask my father, of my father, a field. Peshita. She wanted to ask from her father an inheritance of a field. Well, there's so many differences here. In the Vulgate, verse 18, and as they were going together, she was moved by her husband to ask a field of her father. So that's the other way around. That's originating from the husband. She was moved by her husband to ask a field of her father, and she sighed as she sat on her donkey. And Caleb said, what ails you? What's wrong with you? Wow. So what are the differences here? We got the agency behind the request varies significantly. So in the Brenton Septuagint, we have Aksa initiating the counsel for him to ask. And then she cried out directly. In the Peshita, she wanted to ask and dismounted the donkey. In the Masoretic text, she had him, her husband, ask. Like, how many ways can you divide that, folks? It's like 4 different manuscripts divided into 40 different ways. I'm using a hyperbole there. So then the Vulgate, she was moved by her husband. What? Yeah, we have a problem. We do have a problem here. Is there any more? Can we find? Could you make this up? Could you make up any more variants than what we have here already? Just with this verse alone. How much more can you change it? Like, of course, we have the subjects all the same. We got she's there, he's there, the donkey's there. But wow, do we have differences between the texts? But that's not it, folks. There's more. There's more where that comes from this very same verse. So the description of her action differs greatly. In the Septuagint, she cries from off of her donkey. In the Peshita, she dismounted from the donkey. And in the WEB, she also dismounted from her donkey. The Vulgate, she sighed as she sat on the donkey. So this changes the tone significantly. Wow. Chipmunk says either she was married or not. Yeah, that's about it for sure. Thank you, Chipmunk. How I'm amazed, folks, that we can have so many differences like this. And this goes to show that the text is a lot more dynamic than what we've ever thought possible before. I came from different churches. I've attended different churches and came from the persuasion that, the scriptures are perfect and everything is just perfectly preserved. It's not the case. It's not the case. Can we still find the message of God in there? Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's quite clear, the message itself. All of these details are very different. It just goes to testify of the grace of God and His mercy and His will and His way in using fallible men that have transmitted the text and have not transmitted the text faithfully, as we can see, and still use these fallible men to bring forth His message. This is amazing. All right, let's move on. We have verse 19. Verse 19, the very next verse. She said, "Give me a blessing, because you have set me in the land of the south. Give me also springs of water." So he gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. The Brenton says, "And she said to him, Give me a blessing, for you have set me in the land of Negeb. No, that's not in the Masoretic, is it? What? Land of the south? Okay, so land of the Negeb. So, give me Bathanis. Bathanis? What? Give me Bathanis. The Masoretic text says, give me springs of water. But in the Septuagint, give me Bathanis. And it says in the Septuagint, and he gave her Gonathla, the upper, and Gonathla, the lower. Wow. Wow. That makes things a lot different, a lot more interesting here. Peshitta says, "And she said to him, Give me a blessing, for you have given me in the land of the south. Give me this pond of waters. Pond of waters. And Caleb gave her the upper pond and the lower pond." So the pond is pond in the Peshitta and spring in the Masoretic text. Vulgate. Verse 19, "And she answered, Give me a blessing, that you have given me a southern and dry land." So we get more information here, folks. More information. It's a dry land. It's in the south, and because it's in the south, and the geography of it here, it's dry. So you can't really, you need water to live, right? "Give me also a land that is watered." And Caleb gave her the upper and the nether watery ground. So the significant difference here is that the Brenton Septuagint translates it as Bathanis, whereas the other texts translate like this, the Peshitta, it's a pond of waters. The Masoretic text, it is springs of water. In the Vulgate, it is land that is watered land. this demonstrates the varying degrees of interpretation and explanation of the term, and whether or not it is translated or transliterated. So let's skip on down to verse 32. 32. So we got Labaoth, Shilim, Ain, and Rimmon. All the cities are 29 with their villages. The Peshitta. The Septuagint in verse 32. And Labos and Saleh and Aramoth, 29 cities and their villages. The Vulgate. Labaoth, and Salim and Ain and Rimmon, all the cities 29, and their villages 29 in the Septuagint, 29 in the Masoretic text. The Peshitta says, and Lebuth and Sluk and Imrun, all 36 cities and their fields. Chipmunk says, Internet says Bathanis is Bethany. Makes sense? Makes sense. Does that match on the map? Very good. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, Chipmunk, we'll finish this up. This one verse here. We'll go back to the other one to check it out. Very good question. Yeah. And that makes sense. Never thought of that either. But Bathanis would work with Bethany, yes. And the Greek adds an S at the end of a lot of these names, right? So Bethany. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Chipmunk. Awesome work there. Awesome stuff. So here, the significant difference is the numerical discrepancy, 36 for the Peshitta, but the rest of it, all the other manuscripts say 29. So verse 19, back to verse 19. Give me a blessing because you have set me in the land of the south. Give me also springs of water. So the question, so we'll have to, Bethany, I guess the only way to find out would be to see if Bethany is in the south or not. Okay, so we got here this map that Bethany is right beside Jerusalem, so it wouldn't be in the south. So that matches, at least that particular feature of it would match, that it's not in the south. And by Jerusalem would be, that would be a great gift for Aksa from Caleb, right there by Jerusalem. But here's the question. So Bethany, that ancient city Bethany, was that city known for its waters. Does the name Bethany mean water or waters or have anything to do with water? So as far as I can see here, folks, Bethany, there's nothing like, so it would be better than the South land as far as water is concerned, but it's not known for waters, and its name doesn't have anything to do with waters. It means house of the poor or house of affliction. Beit Ani, house of affliction. Yeah, so it kind of fits, but it kind of doesn't in a way, Chipmunk. But I would suspect that Bathanis is Bethany. It sounds like the same name anyway. That's awesome. Thank you for pointing that out, Chipmunk. Verse 44. Now, folks, with all these different number differences, this would be good if you really want to take some notes for like the different manuscripts and the numbers between the manuscripts and how they vary. And this is where you can see the differences between the manuscripts more than ever, especially, sorry, I hit the microphone there, especially when it comes to numbers. When it comes to words, it's not so, it's a little bit more fluid, but when it comes to numbers, it's like, well, that's not the same number. So it's very easy to see the discrepancies and the contradictions. So, in the Masoretic text, verse 44, we have a total of 9 cities, it says here in verse 44, okay? I mean, verse 44 doesn't have 9 cities in that verse, but it says Kala, Akzib, and Marashah, 9 cities with their villages. 9 cities. The Brenton in verse 44 says 10 cities. The Peshitta in verse 44 says 9 cities, and the Vulgate in verse 44 says 9 cities. So this time, the Septuagint sticks out like a sore thumb there. Another one, verse 57. 57 says 10 cities in the Masoretic text. Septuagint, verse 57, says 9 cities. The Peshitta, Syriac, in verse 57, says 10 cities. The Vulgate, verse 57, says 10 cities. So once again, we have the Masoretic 10, Septuagint 9, Syriac 10, Vulgate 10, and that is in verse 57. Verse 59 and 60, again, we have some differences here with the numbers. Verse 59, 6 cities. This is the Masoretic text. And 2 cities. So in verse 58 it says 6 cities with their villages. Verse 60, 2 cities with their villages. The Peshitta in verse 59, it says 6 cities and their fields. In verse 62, cities and their fields in the wilderness. Vulgate says 6 cities in verse 59 and 2 cities in verse 60. Now watch this, folks. Brenton, verse 59. We have an entire new verse here. It says 6 cities in verse 59 in their villages, but then there's another whole verse that's stuck in there, and it says 11 cities and their villages. So it adds an additional list of 11 whole cities in the Septuagint that's not found in any of the other manuscripts. All of these cities, where did they come from? All of these cities are found in the Septuagint, nowhere else. So it's either they were removed or they were shoehorned in there. One way or another, it's a major discrepancy. Significant difference. So what does this mean? Is it just a difference in number? Well, it really expands the number of cities attributed to Judah by 11. 11 more cities. That's a good one, folks. If you're taking notes, there you have it there. Verse 59 and 60 has in the Septuagint has 11 more cities that the other ones do not have. 11. Verse 61 and 62, this is the last 2 verses we're going to do. In the Masoretic text, it says, in the wilderness, Beth Araba, Medine, Sakaka, Nibsha, the city of salt, and En-Gedi, 6 cities and their villages. The Peshitta, 61 and 62, lists 6 cities and their fields. The Vulgate, 61 and 62, lists 6 cities. Lo and behold, 61 and 62 in the Septuagint's got 7 cities. So the Septuagint's heaping on even more than what we had earlier with all the 11 cities. So there's like 12 cities extra in just these few verses. Significant differences. A few years ago, when we read through Joshua chapter 15 like this, we did not go this deep into it. And quite frankly, I don't know of anyone else. I'm sure maybe there's somebody out there. I don't know if anybody else that goes this deep into it as much as we have. So, if you have any other questions, comments, please feel free to drop those in the live chat. If you haven't already, please leave a like, subscribe, and follow. If you find any value here whatsoever, join the channel. Click that join button underneath. I am rolling out more features. I'm doing my very best to provide more for those of you who are supporting the channel, including audio overviews, video slideshows, depending on which tier that you have selected for support. I know that some of you may have noticed that there has been, over the past few days, there has been audio overviews, like podcasts, if you will, and video slideshows as well, coming at it in a little bit different way than what we're doing here during the live stream, but nevertheless, I do believe it does add value. Chipmunk says, is the city of salt by the sea? Very good question. Yeah, because this is the city of salt. So I'm looking at the manuscripts here. So in the Septuagint, it doesn't say city of salt anywheres. In the Masoretic text, it does. The city of salt. Let me see here. The Syriac does not say city of salt. I think it's only in the Masoretic text. City of salt. Oh no, it's in the Vulgate as well. In verse 62. So we're looking at Joshua chapter 15, verse 62. It mentions the city of salt. The question is the city of salt near or by the sea? And this is an excellent question. I wonder if we can pull up the map here and have a look. All right. So, the city of salt as I understand it, would be around the Dead Sea. Qumran, Kiriath Qumran is what they think it is, the city of salt. Right, so, yeah, from what I understand, it's not on the map here, but as Qumran National Park, so that would be, that, I'm assuming this is the Qumran National Park, Kiriath Karma, this is City of Salt. Let me just have a look here in the, so Joshua chapter 15, is it listed here? No, it stops at verse 60. So it's not listed here. However, the city of salt is supposed to be by the Dead Sea. And that would make sense because the city of salt okay, now looking at yeah, so as I can see here, they got it. This particular map has got the city of Salt mapped off right here. I think it's the very same location that we had on the other map as well. Say right about here, yeah. So right about there. Yeah, so the answer to that question, Chipmunk, as far as I can see here, is yes, it is by the sea, the Salt Sea specifically. Nibshan, the city of salt. So this would be two different cities, okay, because it says 6 cities here, right? So that would be Beth Araba is 1, Medine is 2, Sakaka 3, Nibshan 4, the city of Salt number 5, and then En Gedi is number 6. Right? So that's in verse 62. The Septuagint has... So instead of city of Salt in the Septuagint, it's called the cities of Sidon. This is 7 cities, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the Septuagint. Yeah, it's very hard to say, especially when you have so many different manuscripts that have different names. So we get Yashan in the Peshitta, Syriac, Yashan, Makil, Ein Gad, 6 cities. Chipmunk says it's on the left. Reason why I was asking would be to see what water moved over time. It's right near it. Would this be the one behind the balloon you're talking about? So you got the city of Salt here, and then you have this other name here. I can't really see the full name. Nibshan? Yeah, okay, very interesting stuff, folks. This coming... Thank you, Chipmunk, by the way. That's awesome stuff. Love the way you're digging into it and all that kind of stuff. It's great. Good stuff. Lots of stuff to think about here. This coming August 22nd, this will be not this Friday, but the Friday after it. Friday, August 22nd, we're going to have a special live stream in which we're going to celebrate 4 years of doing what we're doing here, like this kind of stuff. 4 years of live streaming, and I just looked at the stats actually last night, and the stats are going a little bit closer towards 3 million views as opposed to 2.5. I do have 2.5 million views on the I think it's on the thumbnail there on the scheduled live stream, but it is inching up towards 3. It's 2.8 something now. So anyways, we'll be celebrating that on the 22nd. So we have 4 years of going live virtually every day and almost 3 million views. This coming Saturday as well, special live stream where we are going to be digging through the New Testament like never before regarding the quotations and references from the New Testament to the quote-unquote Old Testament and comparing them. How well did the New Testament authors quote the New Testament or the Old Testament? Does our Old Testament match what the New Testament says supposed to say? I'll give you the... I'll steal the thunder here a little bit. The answer is no, it doesn't match. In many places, it doesn't match. In some places, it's way off. But we're going to talk about all that this coming Saturday. Make sure you let your Christian friends know, or anybody for that matter that would be interested in listening to the live stream on Saturday. Saturdays, of course, we will have our live chat wide open as usual, and so just asking for subscriptions instead of memberships in regards to the live chats. All right, guys, so that'll be it for tonight. Chipmunk says, thank you, Christopher. Neat to see where these places are in connection to the word. So neat. Now we got to find the city of Pepper. City of Pepper. All right, well, thank you, Chipmunk. I'm glad that you found this a blessing. I appreciate that. Blessings multiplied to you and yours. Cubert says, thank you. Blessings all. Thank you, Cuberts. Blessings multiplied back to you and your family. Chipmunk says, thank you, Christopher. Neat to see. Oh, sorry. This came up a few times. All right. Yeah, Cubert says 3 million. Beautiful. Yes, yes. It's getting really close to it. And perhaps we will surpass that by the time the 22nd comes around. It's awesome, guys. You guys are amazing. Chipmunks, or excuse me, not Chipmunk. Seek the Lord says, thank you for your time, Brother Christopher. God bless you and all here richly and abundantly. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Seek the Lord. Blessings multiplied back to you and your family. Blessings, blessings. And Chipmunk says, thank you for doing these deep studies. My hamster wheel needs some olive oil to get the squeak gone. All right. Thank you for helping me visualize the word. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad that you're finding this to be a blessing, Chipmunk. I appreciate that. And Chipmunk says 3 million. Woohoo. Yeah. 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 Well, praise God. Hallelujah. And Al says, thank you for everything you do and enjoy your studies always. Shalom, everyone. Have a great night all. Thank you, Al. Shalom and blessings multiplied to you and your family. Okay, folks. Lord willing, and by the way, as well, okay, just another little heads up as well. I mentioned there the other night that there has been a little bit more hardware that I haven't ordered to. My goal here is to get the live music more on the roll. The problem was just so much technical issues with this. And so this coming Friday, it's supposed to arrive. Okay, so hopefully with those extra little pieces on the system, hopefully it'll be better. I'm hoping and praying. So if that's the case, Lord willing, we'll be having live music as well on Saturday. Live music on Saturday, folks, with our New Testament versus Old Testament studies. All right. Well, guys, blessings multiplied to you. Keep on calling on him, and he will show you, he will show you great and mighty things that you don't know. Jeremiah 33:3. Love you guys. You guys are world changers. Good health and long life to you. I pray the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen. Amen. We'll see you guys tomorrow.